We're gonna record it instead.
Alright, how you guys doing?
Hey!
Because of the expansion that we kind of recently finished here at the brewery, I can't really go into the brewing process. We used to do the tours of the brew house, the room that we passed to get to here, and we point out all the stuff in the brewing process, which we can't really do because the space is so cramped in there now. So I'm going to talk about the history and about the stuff going on with the expansion, and it's going to be awesome. So, with the history, we started as a company, became incorporated as a company in 1987. And it was co-founded by two guys. There was a guy named Steve Hickey, who was a former correspondent for Associated Press. And then another guy, Tom Potter, who was an investment banker for a company called Chemical Bank. And he's got some neighbors in Brooklyn. It's about 1986. They came up with the awesome idea of quitting their jobs, which they supported their families with, and starting a brewery. Which is a crazy idea anytime, but even more so in the mid-'80s, because it was before the resurgence of craft brewing here in the U.S. And so when they first started out, they'd gone to these brewers conferences out on the West Coast. There would be like 12 dudes that showed up. Now there are over 1,000 microbreweries in the U.S. Steve and Tom were really at the forefront of that resurgence. Like they were the friends, the guys who started the Sierra Nevada Brewing Company on the West Coast. A lot of those guys all kind of started at the same time. And when they first started out, they did 100% contract brewing, which basically means you get your brewmaster, you get your recipe, or you brew in somebody else's brew house. And we shopped around on a place called FX Matt Brewing Company, which is in upstate New York, Utica, New York. And it's still today where we do all of our 12-ounce bottles. It's all brewed and bottled upstate. So anytime you see one of our 12-ounce bottles in the store, and we do it brewed in Utica as opposed to here in Brooklyn. We actually didn't get the building next door where we started until about 1996, about 10 years later. And originally, it was an ironworks for the Brooklyn Naval Yard, just a couple of blocks from here. So even in here, you can see some of the original bricks. There's some original wood beams. There's these huge cuts of wood that you never see anymore. All the stuff has been replaced by steel in modern buildings. And after that joint was an ironworks, it was a Monster Ball factory. And I don't know why I think that's funny, but I do. And then it was empty for a little bit. When we moved in, we were actually the first brewery in Brooklyn in about 20 years, which is crazy for Brooklyn's history because before Prohibition, there was something like 48 different breweries in Brooklyn alone. It's like something like 50% of America's total beer production was just Brooklyn. And they closed down until after Prohibition, Rhineville was the last to close in 76. And when we moved in, we were taking a look at a whole bunch of different neighborhoods here in Brooklyn. And we ended up choosing the awesome neighborhood of Williamsburg because at the time, in the mid-'90s, real estate in Williamsburg was really, really cheap. It was dirt cheap. It was like a third what it is now. And it was cheap because Williamsburg wasn't the cool kind of hipster neighborhood that it is today. Like Beacons wasn't here, all the good joints at Bedford were here. It was actually kind of a rough neighborhood. And so we got a whole bunch of horror stories when we first started out. We had a guy in a ski mask come by after Friday night happy hour, held us up at gunpoint, and they offered about $30,000 in cash.
Wow.
And we learned it's stupid to keep that much cash around. We stopped doing that, obviously. We had a guy that randomly made off with a forklift in the middle of the day. Street a forklift. There was back in the day when we couldn't afford to lose anything. So Steve and Tom got in a van, drove around all night looking for the stolen forklift, ended up finding it outside of a shady pawn shop in Greenpoint, and they stole it back that night. And I think it's probably one of the great stories I've ever heard. We had a lot of trouble with the mafia when we first opened up, and it sounds weird, but it's true. Basically, in the mid-'90s, whenever you went to build anything new in Brooklyn, you were supposed to write on your contracting payroll that so-and-so did X amount of hours of work, you should make up an employee. And it was essentially a bribe to the mafia. And everybody knew about it, everybody did it, except for Steve and Tom, they didn't know about it, the contractor didn't say anything about it. So when the brewery was supposed to be finished, a whole bunch of articles about it in the Times and the Post, and we got Rudy Giuliani over here, and the mafia heard about it, got upset because they hadn't gotten paid, and sent two guys over to the brewery to basically extort money from Steve and Tom. And Steve is a really nice guy, kind of a soft-spoken guy, so his initial reaction was, I don't really feel comfortable doing that, if that's cool. And it found something like 2 to 3 weeks of these tense negotiations. And in that time, Steve actually called an old friend of his. This guy used to be a federal prosecutor. And he placed himself in the movie Goodfellas. He puts the wire on Ray Liotta in the movie Goodfellas, which he did in real life. And Steve called him up. He's like, hey, I got these mafia guys breathing down my neck. What can I do? What should I do? And the advice that he got from a federal prosecutor was just do whatever they tell you to do because you don't really have a choice. He was like, all right, thanks. And it kind of reached a point when the two guys came back over. They took Steve across the street to the warehouse, emptied the warehouse of people, put Steve in a chair, and one of the guys says, we're going to have to hurt you now. And Steve starts freaking out. The guy starts laughing. He goes, just kidding. We think it's going to be good for Brooklyn. It's going to be really good for the neighborhood. We're going to let it slide. So in the end, everybody became friends, which is really nice. They work security for us now, which is good. No, we're done yet. So we definitely had a lot of things go our way. When we first opened up, we were able to raise about $300,000 from family and friends to start the brewery. And we're a privately held company today, and a lot of the shareholders are still those family and friends from that original investment. And the logo, we got one over here, we got one in the back there. That famous Brooklyn B that we got, our logo is actually designed by a guy named Laser, who's the same guy who designed an I Heart New York t-shirt. He did a whole bunch of Bob Dylan's posters back in the day. But most graphic designers in the mid-'80s cost about $40,000 to come up with a corporate logo. And Stephen Thompson had 20 set aside a budget, so they went to his office and said, "Oh, we got 20 grand. We really want you to do the logo. Is there anything that you can do for us?" And he thought about it, and no place to say, "Tell you what, take your 20 grand, put it back in your pocket. I don't want any of it. All I want is just a small share in your company and free beer for the rest of my life."
Yes.
So it's totally legitimate. It's written in this guy's contract. He gets free beer for life, which obviously makes it the greatest business deal of all time. He's pushing 90 now. It's ridiculous. I kind of feel like he's roping us. What else? We're really proud of the fact that since 1996, since we opened here in Brooklyn, we've become the 32nd largest brewery in the U.S. before we do the expansion. And I think we're the 15th largest craft brewery. And between here and upstate, we brew about 110,000 barrels of beer every year, which is over 30 million bottles worth of beer. It's a lot of beer. And a lot of people don't know we're an international company. We're into Japan, England, Ireland, Denmark, Sweden, Finland, Turkey, Israel, kind of all over the globe, which I think is hilarious because we're not all the way to California yet. So stupid. But we are working on it. That's partially the reason we're doing the expansion. And to give you a little history with the expansion, we actually don't own the building next door. We're on a lease. And it's just easier for us to be on a lease for taxes and whatever else. So we're on a lease, and our lease is about to go up. And not only do we want to renew that lease, but we wanted to get some extra space here in this area. And we took a look at the space that's now Brooklyn Bowl. It's a little too expensive. We were looking out at like Atlantic Pier and Red Hook. It was too expensive. And it basically looked like at the end of the day, we were going to get pushed out of Brooklyn because we just couldn't afford it anymore. And then in 2008, when the economy started to decline, real estate prices took a huge dive. We were able to get a sweet deal on this space over here, which used to be an old stained glass factory. And we moved in towards the beginning of 2010, when construction began. It's basically done now, so we're just about ready to really start the expansion. And phase one of the expansion will probably take about a year. And it's going to take us from the 10,000 barrels that we do every year here in Brooklyn right now to about 30,000 barrels. So in about a year's time, it's going to be 3 times bigger here in Brooklyn than we are right now. And then phase 2 will ultimately take us to at least 120,000 barrels a year. So in about 2 to 3 years' time, we're going to be 12 times bigger here in Brooklyn than we are right now, and twice as big as a company as we are right now. Which is obviously really exciting, but it kind of means on the flip side that the quality of our beer is going to go way down. But I think we're going to be so rich that we won't care pretty good. There's a lot of work out for us. What else? The system that we used to have, the brewing system, used to be a 25-barrel system, which basically meant you got 50 kegs out of every batch of beer that you did. Now we're going up to like 125 or 150 barrel system, or about 300 kegs. The biggest fermenting tanks we used to have were 50 barrels. Now we're going to go up to 200 barrel fermenting tanks, so about 4 times bigger. I think they're going to be twice as bigger as this tank here. Because not only do we have this space here, we go all the way to 12th Street. And on the other side of this wall is nothing right now. We're going to expand on the other side of this wall to 12th Street. And the ceilings are a lot higher, so we'll be able to have even bigger fermenting tanks than those right there. What else? I think in the future, this is our bottling assembly right here for just the 750 bottles of beers that we do, like Local 1, Local 2, Brooklyn or Schneider, House Spice, Black Ops, stuff like that. And this is kind of the direction that we're going to go in the future. We're going to brew more of stuff like Brooklyn Local 1 and Local 2. We're going to start bottling glass, which is on tap today. We've never bottled it before. It's a really awesome double IPA that we do. I think we're bringing back a recipe called Dark Matter, bourbon barrel aged brown ale. We're going to bottle 750 bottles. So that's kind of the future of the Brooklyn Brewery, so to speak. What else? That's kind of it. I mean, do you guys have any questions about the brewery, about the expansion or the history or any of that stuff? I haven't heard any plans that we're going to go public as a company, and it doesn't mean that there aren't any plans, but I haven't heard anything to that effect. I think right now the plan is to still keep it privately owned.
That's what you should stay privately owned.
Even after the expansion, we're capping the amount of beer that we do at 100,000 barrels upstate. So we're not going to brew any more up there. Here, we're still going to do most of the ales in the kegs. We're going to do all of our seasonals and reserve stuff in the kegs. And then we'll be able to brew more of those 750 bottles. So we're not going to do less of anything else. It's kind of basically do more of everything. I mean, we're going to be so much bigger here in Brooklyn than we are right now. We'll be able to not only continue what we do, but do more of other stuff as well. All right, guys, real quick, if you got any questions, I'll be here for a couple of minutes. But I'm supposed to tell you that the stuff that we got on for a limited time today, we have the Blast, which I said is that double IPA that we do. We got our black chocolate stout,
Yes.
which used a chocolate malt. Chocolate malt is awesome. We got the Winter Ale, just another seasonal that we got. And then the newest beer that we have that we just launched on Tuesday is a beer called Main Engine Start, which is just kind of a dry hop, really crisp Abbey single in a style like the old school Trappist Monk style ale. It's unfiltered, kind of has a spicy flavor to it, so be sure to check that out.
Is that a lambic?
What's that?
Is that a lambic?
No, not a lambic, but it does have a Belgian yeast that I think we use for other recipes, but not a lambic. So, real quick, guys, we just want to say thank you very much for stopping by the Brooklyn Brewery. Feel free to take pictures and stuff in this room for a couple of minutes, and then we'll see you at the bar, guys. Thank you. Cheers.